When Amy and I got married, I was in student ministry and I spent a lot of time in Texas. And, after you get married, you get a little comfortable. And then we moved up to Maryland. And by the time we moved up to Maryland, I was tipping the scales at about 220 pounds. And I remember specifically one night I went to church and I had this shirt on that I really liked. And it had horizontal stripes on it. And a guy named John Martindale came up to me. And I love John. He was one of the elders at the church. He put his arm around me and he said, "Hey, Lance, might want to skip the horizontal stripes for now." And I remember hearing that, and I understood what he meant, and it hurt a little bit. Has anybody ever delivered a hard truth to you before? So he delivered that truth to me, and I knew it wasn't because he didn't like me. It was because he really did like me. And he said, and his next line was, "I learned that the hard way." And John was in the process of kind of maybe trying to get a little bit healthier. But anyway, it was a hard truth, and I didn't want to hear it. So, welcome to Reality Church. My name is Lance. We are on week 8. Isn't it amazing that summer's almost over? Or at least, have you seen any back-to-school ads yet? I don't know whether summer's almost over. But we're on week 8 of a series that we're calling The Intentionals. We're covering the Minor Prophets. The Minor Prophets are the books at the end of the Old Testament. They're shorter than the major prophets, but they're no less important. So here we are to talk tonight about Haggai. Everybody in this room has some hard truth that somebody could probably tell you. You don't like to think about it, but we all have blind spots. Don't we? Well, if you don't know it, then one of your blind spots is you don't know you've got blind spots. You and I need good friends to tell us the truth. We do. Today we're going to let Haggai be our good friend, okay? Haggai is going to tell all of us a pretty hard truth. Haggai's name actually means festive, like it's a party. Like it's, that reveals something, I think, that his name means festive. Because lies allow you to party in the present, but they result in you being miserable in the future. That's what lies do, right? They kind of tempt you. They kind of draw you in. Don't worry about it. No big deal. You don't have to do this for now. And then eventually you pay the penalty for that. You don't have to study. You don't have to go to class. Lies will tempt you. They'll draw you in to where you can make stupid decisions. They'll let you party now, but in the end result is you're going to be miserable. Hard truths, on the other hand, they front load the misery. And in the end, you get to party. Hard truths will front load the misery. They'll tell you the truth. Look, you're really needing to get in shape. Or look, your financial life is a mess. Or look, you're kind of lazy and you need to, do something with your life. It doesn't feel good in the moment, but it feels really good if you listen to it. So let me give you some background on Haggai. Haggai is written sometime in the 500s BC. The background is this: the Persian Empire. This is the third empire we've talked about. Remember, we talked about the Assyrian Empire. They were brutal. And then the Babylonians took over from the Assyrians. And guess what happened to the Babylonians? Somebody else took over. This is the biggest empire yet. The Persian Empire, and this is the empire under a king by the name of Darius. He's in the Bible. But King Darius ruled all across the Mediterranean. And so, back in 586 BC, the Babylonians came in, they took over Judah. And they exiled everybody. They destroyed the temple, they destroyed homes, and they exiled everyone. It was brutal. They thought that, they were always going to have this kingdom because they misunderstood some promises. But God told them, if you follow me, I'll bless you. If you forget me, well, then I'm going to draw you back however I can. One of the ways he did this was in 586 BC, the Babylonians took over. They burned the temple. They desecrated the temple. They took all of the holy, blessed things that were in the temple, the menorah, the plates and the serving tables and all of that, and they took it to Babylon. And the Babylonians thought, we're more powerful than this God. And then the Persians came in, and they took over Babylon. Now the people have returned because King Darius said to everybody, all the exiles of all the places that they had conquered, you can go home. Darius was smart. He said, why don't you go home? Why don't you rebuild your places of worship? And that's what happened. A guy named Ezra went to Jerusalem. A guy named by the name of Zerubbabel went back to Jerusalem. And Haggai went back. So, they're all returned, and they're all rebuilding Jerusalem. But they've missed something pretty important. And Haggai is the man that God says, you're going to tell them what they've missed, okay? You're going to deliver the news. And it's something that nobody in Jerusalem wants to hear. They're not ready for this. But Haggai has a message from God, so he's going to deliver it. We do Q&R at the end, so I'm going to leave some gaps in my sermon. If you have a question at the end, please ask it. I think Haggai is going to tell them 4 things. And these are 4 things that I think every one of us in our life tonight could really benefit from. The first one is listen up. Listen up. Listen up. You have misplaced priorities. That's what Haggai is saying to Jerusalem. Here's what he says in Haggai 1. The people are saying, they've all moved back to Jerusalem, the time has not yet come to rebuild the house of the Lord. They've all decided together, they moved back to Jerusalem, they've all decided together, we've got our own lives to rebuild. They went back to their ancestral homes. They had been burned down. They had been broken down. And they said, first things first, let's rebuild our house. Let's get our own house in order. And then maybe someday we'll get around to rebuilding the temple. That's what they mean when they say house of the Lord. Solomon, way back, had built this incredibly ornate, magnificent, a wonder of the world temple for Yahweh on the Temple Mount. And it had been totally destroyed by the Babylonians. So they've come back and they're saying, it's not quite time to do that. Why do you think that they would say, it's not quite time? Because it's going to cost them. It's going to cost everybody. And if they're going to rebuild that temple, because nobody really owns that place besides God, it's going to be a collective effort for them to rebuild that. So they're saying, I've got limited resources, I've got limited time, I've got limited skill, I'm going to build my own house. And God says, why are you living in luxurious houses while my house lies in ruins? See, this isn't about shaming them. It's about God caring for his people. He knows that they're at peace when their world is ordered around him instead of themselves. So he's saying, you're living a small story and not the big story that I'm telling. Look at what's happening to you, he says. You've planted much, but you harvest little. Why do you think this is going on? Where you're dreaming about what your life can be, it's not turning out. You're planting a lot, no harvest. You're working a lot, you're getting very little return on that. Why do you think that is? It's because you haven't built my house yet. You're not being blessed because you didn't obey me. Now, this is going to mean that some of the things you put before me are going to have to move down the list. You've put yourself in front of me. Now, remember, this is the Old Covenant. And the Old Covenant, if you read Deuteronomy, is all about, if you do this, then I'll bless you in this way. If you obey me here, then you'll get this blessing. And God is saying, you're not fulfilling it. You're not doing what I told you, and because of that, nothing's going good for you. Nothing's working out for you. You've put yourself first, and now you're just miserable. This actually points to the New Testament too. We're not really immune from this. We're immune from the Old Covenant. But listen to this in Matthew 6. This is Jesus talking. Oh, whoops. Look at what's happening to you now. Go up in the hills. Okay. This is Jesus talking. Seek the kingdom of God above all else. Seek it first. And live righteously. And he will give you everything you need. Now, this is not the prosperity gospel. If you've heard of the prosperity gospel, it's like, I will bless you because you've done good. This is just a way of viewing life. He's saying, I'm the source. If you order your life around me, then you're going to be fulfilled. I have a friend who used to tell this illustration of going to a sporting event with his kids, and he was handing out Skittles. And the kids were fighting over the Skittles. Like, he got more, she got more. And he was the source of the Skittles. He had all of them. And them fighting amongst themselves and trying to be greedy, you know what it made him want to do? Throw the Skittles away. But you know what would have opened up the floodgates for Skittles is if they had been sharing. If they weren't like trying to grasp and grab and get all the Skittles they could get. And what God is saying is, I'm the source. You're trying to make your own little world. And I've got infinite resources. I could buy all the Skittles. I could get you everything you would ever want. Live instead of in the small story, live in the big story that I'm telling. Live that one out. Seek my kingdom. And all those other things, Skittles included, will kind of be added unto you. You'll get those in the just the run of life because I want to bless you. Luke 12:15 says, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. We aren't valuable because of the zip code we live in. We're not valuable because of the make and model of our car, our 401k, or whatever bling we might have. The kids are calling it bling 10 years ago, so I'm up on that. So what's at stake here? Well, everything's at stake. We all need to listen up. Not just Jerusalem back in, the 520 520 BC. Everybody here has something to gain from listening up. A disordered life, a life that's out of order, a life where you put yourself at the center is soul-crushing. Why is that? It's because God's plan, God's work, His plan, and His presence outweigh everything else. God's work, His plan, and His presence outweigh everything else. A great book that I read one time started out with this sentence. It's not about you. It's not about you. And if you build your world around you, I can promise you this, you're going to be miserable. So listen up. It's not a fun truth to know that it's not about you. Because everything that we hear says that it is. Every cultural message that we get. Make yourself happy. Do what feels good. Live your truth. And God, through Haggai, is saying, listen up. It's not about you. So listen up. And the next thing is show up. God is actually asking them to abandon their plan right now and rebuild the temple, okay? Rebuild the temple instead of just your home. Haggai 1:12-14 says, the whole remnant of God's people listened to Haggai's message, and they began to obey. So the Lord's kind of sparked their enthusiasm. Have you ever had that feeling where you decided to do something, and then the closer you got to it, it's like the more enthusiastic you got? I decided to walk the Camino in Portugal with a friend of mine, and as the trip is approaching, my enthusiasm is just getting like stoked. I just can't wait for it. If you've ever planned a vacation and you got the tickets and you start watching YouTube videos about what to eat and where to go, and your enthusiasm just gets sparked, I think God is doing that sort of thing with the people in Jerusalem. They've decided we're going to rebuild that temple. And they start thinking about it more and more. They start thinking about Solomon's temple and the stories they heard before Babylon destroyed it. And they got this enthusiasm. They began to work on the house of their God. They got to work, in other words, enthusiastically. And probably they were thinking, oh, God told us that the reason nothing's working out for us is that we haven't rebuilt His house. So that was the problem. Well, then let's get about doing it, because I'm sick of the way that I'm living right now. And also they had heard about the glory of Solomon's temple, and they were happy to be a part of the rebuilding. So then Haggai 1:8 says, go up into the hills, bring down the timber, rebuild my house. This was going to take some work. They were going to have to go up into the mountains. They were going to have to cut down trees. They were going to have to pull them down there, some time away from their other efforts. It was going to take commitment to build God's house. By the way, this is not God's house. I used to hear all the time when I was going to church, don't run in God's house. Don't lie in God's house. Don't cuss in God's house. I saw some people smoking in the parking lot of God's house. Well, church isn't God's house anymore. Unless, of course, we're in it, like tonight. It's sort of like, I don't know if you know this, but Air Force One is not called Air Force One. Air Force One is only Air Force One when what? When the president is inside the plane. So this is only God's house when we're here. And guess what else is God's house right now? Wherever the church is. Wherever the church is. So rebuild, in other words, God is saying to them in Jerusalem, rebuild God's house. And I think he's saying the same thing to us. Because all of you together are the temple of God. God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. In Ephesians, it says, together we are his house, becoming a holy temple for the Lord. God's house is everywhere believers are. Bars, movie theaters, even Walmart. I know. God's work, his plan, and his presence outweigh everything else. So show up. Listen up. You know, it's not about you, but show up. We got a question last week about whether our church was outward, minded or inward minded. And I thought, I can't answer that question for everybody. You know who I can answer that question for? Me. And I'm part of the church. And the only one that can answer that question for you is you. Are you mission minded? Show up. This community needs a church that is showing up. Because God's work, his plan, and his presence outweigh everything else in your life. Show up. Well, they built the church. They built the temple. And they didn't have very many resources, and they didn't have the same level of skill. And so they had heard about the glory of Solomon's temple. They built it there on the Temple Mount, and they stood around it. And guess what they thought? They were all very disappointed. It was nothing like Solomon's temple. In fact, some of the people that were there were old enough to have seen Solomon's temple, and they looked at the temple that they built there. Ezra and Zerubbabel. Ezra is another book that you can read that's kind of a companion to Haggai, and it mentions Zerubbabel, who is going to be, he's in the line of kings. They're looking at this and they're going, it's not that great. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had an idea and you thought it was going to be really cool, and then you did the thing and it didn't turn out as cool? Or maybe I remember how, for me, it's like Christmas. When I'd go to the house and everything would be perfect and we'd play games with my dad and my mom, my wife and our kids, and it just was perfect. And then you go back maybe the next year and it's just not quite. Or maybe you've seen the first movie and then they do a sequel, and then you watch the sequel and you go, why did they even produce this? It's just awful. They're looking at this temple and they're going, yeah, that's not it. And some of them are weeping. They're so sad because even with their best effort, they produced something that looked not good at all. And God says to them, cheer up. Cheer up. The temple that you just built will eventually be greater than Solomon's. That's his message. Haggai 2, it says, hey, does anyone remember this house in its former splendor? God's not trying to dig here. He's not trying to say this isn't as good. They were struggling. Some of them were weeping. They were doing their best. And yet it didn't turn out the way that they wanted it to. There are people in our church that remember reality before we hit a rough patch. Do you guys remember? We hit a rough patch. There was COVID, major staff turnover. We don't need to ever get into the mindset that it will never be what it used to be. We don't need to get into the mindset of the best that we can do because we're partnering with God. We do need, though, to look forward to the future because God has a dream and a vision for our church. And this is what he says about that at the last part of this. The future glory of this temple will be greater than its past glory. He wasn't trying to deny reality. He was saying, it's not great. You guys are right. It's not great. But you know what I wanted? I wanted your heart. I wanted you to want to rebuild this more than your own homes. It's not great, but it will be. And when Christians party and when Christians celebrate, we're not saying that the world is perfect. We're not saying that everything's the way it should be. When we throw a party, when believers laugh and we have joy, we're not saying, hey, everything's the way it should be. We're saying it will be that way. When we party, we're not saying everything is perfect, but we're saying it will be. Laughter is an act of defiance in that way against the enemy of your soul that wants to keep you down and keep you depressed. Our laughter ought to confuse the enemy. And for us, this future temple points to Jesus himself, because we've said this the whole series. Every prophet was an intentional preview of the promise fulfilled in Jesus. What did Jesus say about the temple? Well, he said this in John. Destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it up. Spoiler alert, he meant his own body. He wasn't talking about a building. The resurrection proves that when things don't look good, that doesn't mean they'll stay bad. When things aren't optimal, and the crucifixion was not optimal, okay? It looked like complete failure. It looked like a disaster. But if God can replace death with life, then there's nothing he cannot do. And that includes what he's doing here at Reality, what he's doing in your own personal life. Because God's work, his plan, his presence outweigh everything else. We ought to listen up to whatever his plan is. We ought to show up and partner with him. And when it doesn't turn out the way you think it ought to turn out, and it probably won't, because all of us have an infinite ability to dream. When it doesn't turn out the way that you think it ought to turn out, then cheer up, because God's going to do what he wants to do. It may not be perfect, but it will be. How can we accomplish this? Listen up, show up, cheer up. I think only one way. We got to look up. This is about what God has done. Remembering what he's done in your life, what he can do, what he's got the ability to do, and what he's promised he will do. In Haggai 2, it says this: be strong and work, for I am with you. I am still with you, so don't be afraid. No matter what you're facing right now, it's always good to remind ourselves that we're never alone. Nothing is catching God by surprise in your life, whatever it is. He's not shocked by anything that's happening to you. He reminds them of what he's done in the past. I will again shake the heavens and the earth. He's reminding them, don't you know who you're dealing with? Don't forget that I'm with you. This isn't based on your income or your skill or your talent or your resources. This is based on the fact that I'm with you. You're going to be able to do what you do in life because I'm with you, because I have chosen you. He's referencing what he's done in the past, and remembering what God has done in my life has a great calming effect on my current situation. I've been through some stuff, and I bet you've been through some stuff as well. He mentions in this section a signet ring. Look at this. I'm with you always, even hang on a second. Let me see. Haggai 2:9. Well, it's not. Signet ring. There it is. I knew I was missing it. Signet ring. Now, this signet ring in this, you guys saw it before me. I get that. This signet ring here is for a guy named Zerubbabel. He's actually going to be the king, okay, or kind of the placeholder for the king. But it's not just for him. In all of these minor prophets, they do a near meaning. There's going to be a new temple, and Zerubbabel's going to wear the ring because he's chosen. And then there's a far-reaching meaning. This is actually a messianic prophecy about Jesus. I'm going to give, signet rings were about authority. And he's saying, I'm building a new temple. I'm going to give a new king authority. And I'm going to give him, because he's chosen to do what? He's the anointed one. He's going to be the one to bring salvation. Long before Christ, this was a way of pointing to him. So, and we see that in Matthew 28. He makes the same promise that God makes. God said, I'm with you all the time. Never forget, I'm with you. Jesus, who is God, says, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. This is the promise from Jesus, because every prophet was a preview, intentional preview of the promise fulfilled in Jesus. You are never alone. You don't have to rely on you. Isn't that good news? You don't even have to rely on other people around you. I have a new friend. I've only had a couple of conversations with him, but I love the way he thinks. His name is David Zoll. He wrote a book called Low Anthropology. And he says this: when it comes to your life and how you can work it out on your own, Jesus confronts us with our limits, not to discourage us, but to engineer a situation in which the phrase, what's impossible with man is possible with God, might find traction. Faith in God begins where faith in oneself ends. We have got to come to the end of ourselves. We've got to realize you can't orchestrate a life that's just going to fulfill everything that you need. Instead, don't expect so much from yourself, but expect a lot from the God who says, I'm always with you. If he says that, and it's not just figurative, he's literally here. And then he says, in one point in the future, I'm actually going to make my home and I'm going to bring the new heaven to the new earth, and we're going to be together forever. God's home in Revelation is now among his people. He will live with them. And one day the name Emmanuel, which we always talk about at Christmas, that promise, God with us, is going to be fulfilled. When the capital city will descend on Jerusalem, and do you know where the temple will be? In the middle of Jerusalem? Will it be there? Did you know that in the capital city that comes down, the new heaven, new earth, there will be no temple? Why? Because we've become the temple of God. I don't think we have to guess how we should apply this. I mean, God's work, his plan, his presence outweigh everything else, and I think God is telling us to build. You're becoming something. You're making choices day in, day out. I think you need to listen up. Reflect on your priorities right now. Are you investing in God's kingdom? Or are you just investing in whatever it is that you've got going on personally, personal gain? Investments, 401k. We try to create the good life by grasping for things. We can do this in a ton of different ways. It's not easy to hear that you're being selfish. It's not easy to hear that you're centering your life on you. And I'm not here to tell you that. But I am here to ask you to ask yourself, am I? Is this a hard truth I need to hear? So listen up. Show up. I think one of the ways for you to figure out whether you're selfish or not is just decide to show up. Start serving somehow. Go to Camp Barnabas. Be one of the people that we've asked. We need 72 people for the end of the year to give an extra $300 a month. By the way, just keeping in the spirit of Haggai here, it may not be 300. It may be 150. It may be 50. It may be 10. I don't think God cares. He's not short for cash. You know what he is short for? People whose lives are centered on him. He can take the small effort, like that small effort to build the temple, and turn it into something amazing. Eventually, that second temple became a wonder of the world. Herod came along and he built the temple complex, and he made it a wonderful place for God's presence to be there in the middle of Jerusalem. So listen up. Show up. Maybe you want to join Alpha. We're starting that in the fall and serve in that. Maybe you want to join a life group. And then when you start trying, when you start saying, I'm going to read my Bible, I'm going to come to church, I'm going to join a life group, I promise you that you're going to be disappointed at some level. People are going to let you down. Some level. So cheer up, because it's not going to be perfect, but one day it will be. Things will let you down. Maybe some things are broken in you. God will restore those. This world, this church, your family, your job are not going to measure up to your expectations. Once you realize that, your ability to experience joy in life will rise because your expectations of the world have diminished. It actually is a better way of doing life to not expect everything from this world. Trust God. Trust His greater plan, even when the results seem small. And that might mean for you and me listing out what God has done in my life up until this point. What have you done, God? What have you done in my life? And you might even, this might give you some encouragement, list out the hard things. If you've been through really, really difficult times, list out the hard things. And if you're honest with yourself, you will be able to say some good things came out of that. I wouldn't have wanted to go through it. I wouldn't have chosen it. But I'm a better person today than I would have been had I not gone through it. The fact is, we don't even know what's good for us, do we? Until we go through it. And we would rarely choose the things that have benefited us the most. So, show up. One place to show up, by the way, is movie night. Not just because, like I said, we celebrate, we party, we invite people in, and we laugh because, not because things are perfect, not because we're ignoring the world, but because things will be made perfect. So, invite somebody to movie night and pray that it won't be 90 degrees outside when we do it. So, the last thing is look up. How do we look up? Spend time in prayer. Spend time in Scripture. And focus on God's presence. That sounds so easy. But it's not easy. Not easy at all when we live in a world that's full of, you can do it. You've got what it takes. You don't need to depend on God. There's the big cultural lie. Fix it yourself. Paul Miller, in a great book, says this. It's called A Praying Life. I really recommend that. In the broader culture and in our churches, we prize intellect, competency, and wealth. Because we can do life without God. Praying seems nice but unnecessary. Money can do what prayer does, and it's quicker and less time-consuming. You see what his argument is here? He's saying we've created a world that we can control. Why would we pray? Our trust in ourselves and in our talents makes us structurally independent of God. And as a result, exhortations to pray don't stick. People tell you to pray, but you realize, wait a minute, why do I need to? I'm living a me-sized life, a small story. Why do I need to pray? You don't. There's the truth. But if you start listening up and showing up and doing what God-sized dreams that He has for you, oh, you're gonna want to pray because it's bigger than you. Well, guys, before we close out, I wonder if I've created any gaps that you guys want to fill with questions. Anybody? Yes, sir, Easton. Yeah. God has given you absolute free will. And the reason I know that is because if he didn't give you absolute free will, autonomous free will, then you would never be able to love him, right? Because love is always chosen. If you could push a button and cause someone to love you, then it would never really be love. And because of that free will, you can make dumb decisions. I can make dumb decisions. But God is also all-knowing. He has seen the beginning. He has seen the... That doesn't, by the way, that doesn't erase your free will. Just because he knows what you're going to do. If I watch the Super Bowl that the Cowboys won back in the 90s, I know exactly what's going to happen. Am I removing their free will because I know? No, I just happen to... I know the beginning and the end of that game. So God doesn't remove your free will just by knowing. But what God does is he redeems every bad choice. He's playing 4D chess. We're playing checkers. So what he can do is redeem any bad choice. It's not a fatalistic, oh, I screwed up my world and now it's never going to be good. He redeems everything. When I was growing up, they said, there's only one perfect one for you out there, and you need to find that one. That's balagna. Okay, that's a Greek word, which means not true. And the reason we know that's balagna is because surely way back there in the past, somebody married the wrong person. And then that screwed it up for everybody else. There are no, you know what I mean? Do the logical domino there. Nobody's got the right person anymore because a bunch of screw-ups back there in 50 AD. So what God does is he redeems our choices, and he can make beautiful things. Scripture says this, bring beautiful things out of garbage. He makes beautiful things out of ashes, okay? He resurrects dead things is what he does. So we don't have to not sleep at night wondering if you made that one wrong choice and now your life is just taking the exit ramp on the wrong choices. So does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I appreciate that question because that's the extreme level, and the more subtle version is everywhere, like live your truth. And there are aspects to that have the hook of truth in them, right? I do need to take care of myself. I do have experiences that nobody else has. But the danger, and it's so subtle, is I'm going to make me the center of my world. Now I'm God. That's why Christians get ticked off at God, because they bought a little version of that lie where if I prayed and I went to church and you didn't answer my prayer the correct way, then there's no God. And we can buy the little tiny version of that, and it can derail somebody's faith. Now, your version, that version is, no, it's not even ambiguous. I'm God. I control my world. Well, that's not true. And every one of those people is going to die, and every one of those people is going to go through struggle. And everything crumbles under the weight of worship, including you. You put yourself in the center of your world, you're going to crumble under the own weight of your own worship for yourself. And that's dangerous. It's a lie. It's the old lie that was told to Adam and Eve, right? You have a need, manifest that need. Eat the apple, whatever it is, you know. You do what's right for you. And it sounds good, sounds attractive, sounds true, you know. But